Welcome back to another episode of Inside Moves, West Coast Edition, Part 2. We're in Los Angeles with Jack Jensen. Jack is the founder of the Rec League, one of the world's best creative agencies focused on sports. Maybe it's best to start with you just explaining the Rec League and what your focus is now. What is the Rec League? What do you guys do?
Yeah, so the Rec League's an independent creative agency, production company, post house. We work almost entirely within the sports culture space with brands, directly with athletes, teams, and was built really kind of born out of this idea that we felt like there wasn't a lot of authentic people who love sport on the creator side that also understood how to build strategic marketing that actually worked for brands. And so in general, you know, I've been in sports my entire life. It's where I wanted to be a sports writer. I was a college athlete, and I've only really wanted to work in sports. I had a roommate in college that, you know, had seen that, you know, I'd been making videos and just writing short stories and knew I'd always wanted to be a sports writer. Said, actually, you know, Nike was, founded from Oregon alumni. I went to the University of Oregon. It's founded by Oregon alumni, and, you know, when they make their advertising, it's not really out of Nike always. It's kind of these advertising agencies.
Right.
So he was in the advertising track. He brought me with him to class, and it felt like a whole new way to utilize creativity and then also kind of push sports culture forward, use my creative brain in a way that I didn't really know existed.
Right.
So I went to school, I'll weave this back to the Rec League, but I went to school to be a sports writer. That was what I thought I wanted to do, to write basketball.
Yep.
And when I found that outlet, it felt like a way to tell sports stories in a kind of like a borderless environment.
Yes.
That it didn't feel contained in a column or just like one written piece. I could still do that, but I could like think so much more. So then when I went into work after school, I wanted to work in sports specifically, and advertising became the track. A lot of creatives go into advertising with a breadth of curiosities and interests. So that an agency that maybe has a sport client might have a coffee client, might have, a car client, and that creative needs to kind of be versatile to work on these different things.
Yep.
And that is a skill you need. You need a curiosity and, understanding audience insights. You need to be a part of culture. And to me, I felt like so I went into my first job in Los Angeles, and I was put on a bunch of different clients. And I found it like interesting, but I just didn't feel like the connection to these other brands, these other verticals. But when I would watch sports stuff that whether that was a film or a commercial or read a story as a kid, I got inspired by it or interested in it. And it just hit me on a different level because I knew the person writing it knew what I knew. They loved about it what I loved.
Yeah.
I was like, why can't we do that in marketing? So the best Nike stuff we grew up on just felt that. It felt like it was actually Michael Jordan's words, even though it was a copywriter from Portland that wrote those. And so I was like, okay, this is really interesting. And so when I went into there, we had some big sport clients. We had a lot of people in these agencies. A lot of people, had a passing interest in sports, but I lived and breathed it.
Yeah.
And 24/7, that's like the biggest thing in my life has always been sports. So I felt like there's an opportunity for the sports space to create stuff with people that actually loved it, because you can call bullshit on it from an audience perspective. If you watch something, you read something that feels off. And so it honestly just born kind of opportunistically that, hey, I know that there's sport clients. I know that there's money in brand and in advertising, and they need to be authentic. Culture's always moving. They need people that understand it. But, these athletes, these teams, they have great content makers, great like creatives, but they just weren't really like trained in like strategic brand marketing that a brand person would trust with, like, because it's like they know you want to get the athlete story.
Right.
But like, do you know the brand story too?
Right.
So we presented this option as like, I know exactly what you want and I know what they want. And I'm going to hit that weird zone where the athletes like talking to me about it in our group. And then the brands like talking to me because I can filter that and put it in a wrapper that an audience loves, a brand loves, and an athlete loves. And so, we started it with no clients, no revenue, really no plan other than, my roommate at the time, Trent Euban, was a really great filmmaker and editor that I had met at a job. And we just kind of started saving money and making videos and just kind of get opportunistic where we would create our own clients out of nothing. And then that just kind of built in and snowballed. And yeah, now it's been 7 years.
Wow. So how do you, is it your responsibility to really, you're saying you're in the middle, you know what the talent, the athlete wants, and also the brand wants. Is it kind of chicken or the egg thing? Like, how do you build out, and is it your responsibility, I guess, to go find that as the creative agency? But like, which came first, I guess?
Well, it's twofold. One, for the agency, there's certainly the just outreach of finding that new business, those clients and those people that want to do work and want to like have that relationship. In terms of when we actually have that relationship with a brand, typically there's a brief or a moment that they want to hit. That hits a goal within the brand's mind. Sometimes it's attached to talent. Sometimes it's just attached to a moment. Sometimes it's attached to a product or a new initiative. And they utilize us from a creative agency, one, to help come up with the strategy and overall creative idea. What's the wrapper? What's the look, the feel, the voice? Like, what are we saying? What's the statement we're making? And then, there's traditional models in the advertising world that just do that, and they do it great. Mm-hmm. And they have creative teams, account teams, and strategy teams, and they're coming up with ideas, and they're mining audience insights, and they're saying what's popular in culture right now. This is what we think audiences are doing. This is where the brand can fit in. This is how we can take advantage of the moment. And then typically they would go out to production vendors, and whenever they sold that, maybe that's a film, maybe that's a website, maybe that is some photography, maybe that's just some social stuff. Mm-hmm. And we kind of felt like, all right, well, we're diluting this process by continuing to bring in so many voices into it. Not that more great voices don't make it better. It's just we found like a lot of fingerprints on stuff just started to dilute the idea because everyone just felt like they had to take their piece of it. Yeah. And so, we wanted to build a model from day one that was like, the same team, the same expertise that's like helping come up with these ideas or funneling them across production and post. Yep. And so, now I think it's like an industry standard that a lot of agencies have production capabilities. I think like in large part, like I don't sleep and I have ADD and I'm just like always learning and searching and looking online and like seeing where I see opportunities and where I see misses. And I felt like a lot of agencies that started as agencies would be like, we do production now. Mm-hmm. And the brands you would see go, do you do it well though? Because now you've added it. Right. And so I felt like we had to, from day one, we do it all. This is like, so we're going to, live and die on what we make, not from what our past says when we only did one of the parts. Right. And so, it's to go on your original question, you get that, we sell in an actual idea, they buy it, then that moves to production typically. Got it. That in combination, because production's already been working with the creative team and the brand team on the brand side, quote clients, but really just partners and collaborators in this. They're along for this entire journey too, and it's just kind of a seamless work into production. We actually do a lot of with a lot of times athletes and pro athletes are part of that. Yeah. We feel like part of what makes the rec league so unique is just like how we work with athletes and their teams. And then through post as well. So through editorial process, coloring, VFX, like all of that is handled within our team, and we have leaders placed at all, of those stops. Gotcha.
So, and then you said to like, I guess, convince your first clients that you really were the guys that could do this. You said you were making stuff. Like, what were you making? Is it kind of like a trailer or like, this is some stuff we've worked on? Was that enough? Or how did you really get that chance to have a brand trust you with this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, one, I'm a realist in terms of like, I saw a lot of people that would make spec ads. Yeah. They'd make fake ads that would have a brand at the end, and they'd say, "Hey, this is like what it is." Yeah. And I always felt like that was such a weird miss. Because you were like admitting that you didn't get the thing. Yeah, I was like, just make something cool. That's fine. Yeah. I don't need to have a brand at the end to know that you think well. Yeah. And so we didn't want to do any of that. And we had a lot of work, all of us, another early guy that joined us, Scott Swindler, was actually my client at ESPN when I was working at an agency called 72 and Sunny. And same thing, when we brought him in as well, we kind of just looked at the landscape and went, okay, we have all of this work from our portfolios where maybe a client could say, hey, did you actually do all of those things? Like, I know you were creative on it, but like somebody else directed that, somebody else edited that, and you had an engine behind you. You're like, all right, I don't want to answer that question. I don't want to have to say I don't know.
Right.
So at the beginning, we just kind of looked for like, all right, where can we manufacture some things? You know, I did track and field at the University of Oregon. I had some great contacts there. I did high jump, and I had a buddy who was like an Olympic high jumper. There's not a ton of media opportunities outside of Olympic track to get an Olympic high jumper to do stuff. I hit him up and said, hey, good day. We're going to do a free video for you. Just need like 8 hours of your time.
Nice.
So we did that.
Everybody likes that though, right?
Oh, he loved it. It's great. Flew up there to Oregon, you know, saved our money, really bootstrapped, did that just as a short film. Okay, we had it. Said, all right, that's cool. It's not a client. So I said, how can I use what I already do? I've been, you know, when I got out of school, I still had that bug to write. I love to write. I'm always moving. And I'd worked at Dime Magazine for a few years, and then with Slam Magazine, I'd started to write with them. And I hit up their editor and said, hey, I have some stories that I would love to write for basketball. And instead of like just doing an interview with them, are you cool if I do a video? He's like, we'll get the story, right? Like, yeah, absolutely. Print story, done, sealed. I'm also going to do this video, though. You don't have to pay extra for it. I'm going to do it, though.
Smart.
So then I would go to the athlete directly and their team. I'd say, hey, no brand, it's you and Slam. There's a story going to come out, but actually I kind of want to just make like a film with you. I want to make like your own spot. So I got Kuzma and the Lakers to agree to it. The Denver Nuggets, which I'm from Denver. I'm a Denver homer. Threw that in there, and then one with Sharif O'Neal, and we created, as if they were the client, we created these full brand films for them. It wasn't just like an interview thing. It wasn't a day in the life thing. It was like a pointed thing that you could see a brand use. We just didn't want to do a fake brand. At the end, it was a brand. It was Slam.
Right.
And it was getting hundreds of thousands of views. The Kuzma, we launched with the Kuzma one with him riding around Los Angeles in a red, Cadillac DeVille. And all of a sudden, sports picked it up, ESPN picked it up. It was talked about on ESPN. They thought he actually owned the car. There was and it was like, okay, cool. We understand the buzz. And so when we started putting those things in, we had to convince people less that we knew the pulse of culture.
Yeah.
And we knew how to do the thing. And then that led into, a close contact of mine who had started Dime Magazine, this guy, Patrick Cassidy, had gone to New Balance, and he saw us and honestly, just took a risk, hit me up and said, hey, what's this rec league thing and how can we get involved? That started with a little project with New Balance, and we just, we got one little crack of light in the door open, and we just flooded it with like, what else can we do? Give it to us. Here's stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And that's kind of like been day one, if I see like any opening and I want to do it, I'm just going to I already know what's going to happen if I don't do this.
Yeah.
And I don't care if I fail or hit an exit sign. So I'm going to try, you know. And so, yeah, it's been an organic thing. And then New Balance led into EA Sports. It's led into a lot of amazing client partnerships.
Yeah. Prep meets opportunity, right? It's like, it's the athlete saying. So to identify this gap, I think we got to go back a little bit here because I want to hear about your time before Rec League, because these are deep thoughts that you're expressing about an industry. You clearly were observing things, and you clearly understood them at a high level. What got you to the point where, you could take a jump and be like, I'm going to go start my own thing. This is how we're going to do it. You can go back as early as you want to go, but I'm curious to hear.
Yeah, honestly, pretty organically. Like, I went to Oregon to do track, and I met a bunch of people in sports, which is really interesting. And I got out of it with this idea that, okay, I want to work in advertising now.
Yeah.
And so, when I came down to Los Angeles with like $200, and I was like kind of living in my Ford Explorer, and I got an internship at this advertising agency, and I, based off of just like, I couldn't afford portfolio school, I couldn't afford grad school. And so I had written some pieces for Dime Magazine, and I'd like made a couple videos. really nothing looking back on it that like anyone of actual note should be hiring somebody off of.
Yeah.
But I convinced this person that I was like good enough for a $400 a month internship.
Yeah.
I was like, that's all I need. So went in with this sole intention, like, cool, I'm going to jump into advertising and I'm going to figure out however I can in this world, having no even idea that you could start your own thing.
Right.
Like it was solely to just like try to crush this. And when I moved down, my now wife, we were long distance at the time. She was still at Oregon. And we ended up doing that for like 4.5 years, which gave me this really interesting buffer in Los Angeles where I would work as hard as I could at this agency job. I would get off of it, and then I would go find a basketball game in LA.
Yeah.
And I would play that basketball game, and I would meet 10 people, and then I would go meet them. And then I would work at Dime when I was, got home, and I think I slept like 2 hours a night, but I was meeting like 30 people new a week playing basketball, all within the industry in LA.
Yeah.
Very authentic too. Like, honestly, we can get into it too. Like, pickup basketball became kind of like one of the biggest reasons all of this kind of connected together. But, so then, there's some success at 72 and Sunny, met some really great people, and then got burnt out. Really, like, was just, I think, it was like years of just, all right, I think my body needs like a break. And I'd really hit like an actual burnout zone. And so I was like, maybe I'll take a break. And at that time, I had a friend go over and he's working at Nike basketball at their agency out here called RGA. And I went in and chatted with them, and that turned into about 18 months over there creative directing for Nike basketball. Met a lot of like really good folks too. And that was the moment where I felt like I was trained really well at my first agency, and I understood a bar. There's such immense talent in that agency that you just wanted to raise your game. You went to Duke. It's the same thing. Like, you're a great athlete when you came in, but being there wanting to be great made you better.
Yeah.
And like that, so I learned that. I learned this like great work ethic, and I kind of felt like I had it from sports. But then Nike was like, okay, I knew now I could like show this on a leadership level. And it became less scary. Like, I became a safety net where I wasn't a safety net in the prior job. So becoming a safety net and getting all those skills and being opportunistic and seeing like sports makes me happy. Working in sports makes me happy, and I think I'm good at this. And so that just combined with like, honestly, some really ambitious friends.
Yeah.
And then that was like my, roommate Trent at the time. It was like he was super ambitious and he felt unfulfilled in his job. And I think we were like, all right, what could this be? And honestly, like Rec League, we were like, it could be a t-shirt company.
Yeah.
And we're like, okay, maybe we're probably not gonna make money doing that. And then it just turned into like, why don't we just do the thing we've been doing?
Yeah.
So really, honestly, like organically, I think like if I would offer advice to somebody starting their agency, would be to probably have a client first.
Yeah.
So we, I think you mentioned earlier just around luck, and I think luck is a huge part of thing, but I think being persistent, the more persistent you are, the more chances at luck you get. And once you get that luck, then you just hit it.
Of course.
But yeah, it was, long-winded way of saying like organically, but it felt right at the moment.
Yeah.
To start it. It didn't feel like I was jumping into it because I had to or because like that would fulfill me.
Right.
It just felt organic.
Right. And was it like, to me, like looking back on your road to where you are now, which is success, there was challenges though. There was like, times where I heard you were sleeping in your car, like you moved to LA with no money in your pocket, looking for a job. Did that ever like worry you? Were you ever like, I need to make more money, I'm worried about the future? Or were you kind of ambivalent and just having fun in life?
I think like I would be remiss to say I don't like live with like a steady dose of just anxiety as like a human. But no, that was like my mom hates whenever she hears like the car story because it's like my parents had no idea that I was doing this, if I could just say. But no, it was like, it's just like to bring it back, when, growing up, like you go to tryouts and you have to make a team. And I wasn't the best, but I worked my ass off.
Yeah.
And I went to Oregon as like a preferred walk-on, and I'd done track 2 meets in high school. Like I didn't know what I was doing, but I was like, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And so that like kind of crazy mindset of just like, I don't care if I fail, but like, this is the person I want to be.
Yeah.
So I was like, I went to San Francisco, tried to get an internship. That didn't work out. And I was just like, I think I look like a loser to my girlfriend at this point. And I'm like, I got this opportunity in LA. I've always wanted to live in LA. And I was like, I'm doing it. I didn't want to move back to Denver. I grew up in Denver. Didn't want to go back because I felt like that would be the fail.
Yeah.
And that scared me more than not having money in LA. And I came down to LA. I called a friend from Oregon, and I had an amazing network of buddies that had a couch here, when I needed it, and support, and just like a amazing emotional support too, to come back to some familial buddies from college who are going through life at the same time.
Totally.
But no, I mean, there's struggles, but this is so blessed to we're all within perspective. Very grateful for every opportunity, and I feel like I work really hard, but everyone's got their path, and luck plays a part.
Of course, yeah. But I mean, it's like just the motivation factor of it. I think you're right. Like, something needs to scare you. It's one of the reasons why I like talking to former athletes, and why I usually hit it off with former athletes. Why we like to invest in former athletes when we're at JDS Sports. Just that balance of risk tolerance, motivation, focus, and it works out really well for founders, I think.
I do too, and it's like, I look at risk, like, where do you place risk? If it's with me, I'm not risking, I'm not jumping out of planes, but if it's career risk, I am okay taking my career risk.
Yeah.
If it's really risking other people, that's where I'm a little more cognizant.
Totally.
And what's the smartest route forward. But I do feel like, I prepare for everything, every call I have, every meeting I take, every brand I talk to, everything I watch. I try to prepare myself to it. So even if it's a risk, in my mind, I've assessed it so many different ways. I've tried to solve the problem in my head so many ways.
Yeah.
That if my answer in my heart is you got to try it, then I trust myself in that. I don't jump into things where I don't succeed on things that, I go into completely blind sometimes, and I don't like to do things I'm not good at.
Yeah.
And so that's, in order to do that, I got to feel like it's achievable.
Right.
But I do feel like the ceiling of achievable in LA for me, represented, a ceiling I couldn't see the top of.
Yeah.
And there was just so many opportunities. I think there is so many opportunities. I think there's opportunities in moments where a lot of people feel really down, and it's okay, well, that's when I can thrive.
Yeah.
In all honesty.
Yeah, it's a good way. You got to be able to flip the switch, and
hustle.
And hustle.
And you can hustle about being a good person.
Totally.
I think that's part of the equation too. I try to be as good a person as I can to everybody.
Yeah.
And I don't try to meet anybody to get anything out of it. If I can provide value to them, absolutely. I'm here to help anybody.
Yeah.
But I think there's an authenticity to that. I think that bleeds through work. And we all have to find our own lane on what to do, right? I wanted to help push sports culture forward however I could.
Yeah.
The Nuggets still haven't sent a 10-day to me.
Yeah.
And so, okay, if I'm not going to play, how can I provide value? And it might be through creative,
So you said something interesting. It's something that I have to add. I always want to know the psychology of high performers, right? And for me, those were athletes. Those are the people I studied. And I always wanted to model my psychology after people that were able to get to the top. One of the topics that I thought was always interesting with my personal struggles, and you said, risk for myself, I can handle, risk for others has a different meaning to it, right? I always think about team sport, individual sport, and how being on a team sport did things to me. And I wonder if it would have been good for me to do an individual sport, at least both try, right? You ran track, and you also are a highly competitive basketball player. It sounded like you almost played college basketball instead.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to do. I mean, no doubt. I was tiny in high school, and so I grew it was something 9 inches or something in 6 months into my senior year. So I had a summer where I got some D3 offers, letters, and I was knocking on some D2 doors, but I really grew physically going into my freshman year in college and the end of my senior year. And I think, I'd always been skilled in basketball, but it all kind of came together a year or two too late for to me to actually make a collegiate impact. And then, track, I had a couple buddies, John and Dwight, who were on the basketball team with me for 4 years, and they were like, we're doing track.
Yeah.
All right, man, I do not like running for running's sake. So we went out there and tried high jump, and it was just the strangest thing, dude. I've been wanting to dunk my entire life, doing the same motion every day since I was 10. I did air alert, jump soles. I wanted to dunk so bad. And I like finally dunked senior year.
Nice.
And the track coach this guy, Brian Kula, like another, I'm also obsessed with just these people that come into your life for certain parts and end up affecting your entire life. And he was one for me, this guy, Brian Kula. He was an amazing track coach. He became an epic track football coach in Colorado, Coach Christian McCaffrey. Like, he's like a big time dude. He's like, go reverse dunk it. Just like you're going to, rise your arm and put your knee up and you're just going to dunk it and then you're going to turn your head at the end.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right. Sounds good, man. And it just like it worked out.
I love when people do that. They just like can translate some complicated
very weird.
Because he knew you. He was like, this is what will make sense to him. I understand this. He understands that. Like, let's find some middle ground. Those are the genius coaches, I think.
Dude, totally. And I jumped legitimately twice and like got enough mark where he was like, where are you looking at school?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I looked at Oregon because they got a great journalism program. And, my dad was like, you can go to D3 basketball, but like, what are you doing after that?
Right.
I'm like, all right, that's a good point. And he's like, well, I'm friends with the coach at Oregon, and no one knows who you are. Yeah. So I'm just going to call him and tell him your marks and that like you work hard. And so like, the Oregon coach saw a tape and was like, okay, sounds good. So I came in and that's
incredible.
But even that moment was, you talk about imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
I remember this is tangent now at this point.
No, go. Tangents are
good. Freshman year, I get up to Oregon, and I didn't even know. I knew Prefontaine was a thing.
Yeah.
Steve Prefontaine was a thing. And I knew Nike was a thing. I didn't know it was like religion up there.
Yeah.
So like, again, I grew up in Denver and Ohio and Chicago and these like Midwest, and I was big college basketball. So I was like, okay, I know Luke Ridnour and Luke Jackson. So Oregon seems like cool. Yeah. I get up there. It is the biggest track school in the world.
Oh, yeah.
I had no idea. So I'm walking into the biggest track school in the world as like a preferred walk-on to people who have wanted to do this from day one.
Yeah.
And so I go into the first meeting, and we had this, I'll never forget, we had this amazing little meet and greet. There's like 65 guys on the men's team and on the women's team. And then I sit down next to my like eventual best friend, best man at my wedding, this guy Andrew Greif, who's a long jumper. And everyone stands up in front of the team and says who they are. And they're like, I'm Galen Rupp, Olympian, I'm this guy, All-American, school record holder, state world champ, blah, blah. Unbelievable accolades. Like, we had more than a handful of Olympians on the team. And I stood up and was like, Jack Jensen, high jump from Denver. I averaged 14 points in my AAU this summer. Happy to be here. And that became I was just like happy to be here. Got a couple laughs, and it was like, and then I just learned how to do it there. And
unbelievable. I mean, you must be one of you could probably count on one hand people that went to Oregon for track and picked it up a year earlier. Like, it's like going to playing Alabama football and like picking up football.
It was very odd. And freshman year, I think it was funny. My coach and I ultimately had a good relationship. At the beginning, you could tell, again, this is a dude who lives and bleeds track. He's like, who is this dude who plays basketball? And I'm pretty sure they wanted to cut me all freshman year. And then sophomore year, I became the number one high jumper on the team. And
incredible, man.
Yeah, I think I was ranked 4th in the Pac-10 for a while.
That is incredible.
And it was just like, I clicked. It clicked.
Yeah.
And then, I think there's any what ifs of us and, our athletic pursuits. I grew a love for track and field, but this basketball thing was just, and I was like, I feel strong. I feel like my ups are good. Like, so I tried to translate that into trying out for the basketball team. Again, just like, what am I going to do? Yeah. So, I did a couple, I did a tryout, and then I ran with the team once and talked to the coach, and I was like, I think I'm in. Yeah. And then they're like, we're not taking any more at the end of it. And I just, okay, all good. Went back and just kind of, enjoyed college. And amazing experience. Oregon was the best.
I imagine,
But being an athlete there, that fulfilled such a dream of mine too. Just D1 athlete and being able to do it.
Yep.
And then actually put it together. But it paid dividends. Met such great friends, and then was able to watch greatness on display at such a unique level. We had this guy, Ashton Eaton, who, same thing, he came in as a long jumper. He's an incredible athlete. And the coach saw him, sprint and long jump and said, I think you should be a decathlete. And then he went out and won 2 gold medals at the Olympics for decathlon, was a world record holder. And it's like, so even that, like, I think what track is interesting and what showed me in business really is like, you have these opportunities that there's great athletes that have no idea they would be good at track.
Yeah.
And I learned that in that moment, that it's like, man, there's so many people that could take from this thing.
Yeah.
And if you apply that same thinking to everything else in business, it's like, you don't even know what you could be great at here. There's so many opportunities.
Yeah, I think about that a lot too, man. I really do think about that all the time, where like there's some maverick that just supposed to know nothing about an industry, or he's supposed to, be a foreigner, and then he shows up and he's just competing with the legacy, whoever in that industry. It's like, how do you do that? And part of it has to be, some kind of like internal confidence. Maybe it's even off this planet and crazy to a degree, but maybe that's the secret sauce for some people, whereas for me, it's like imposter syndrome all the time. It's like, why do I belong here? And especially in JDS's portfolio, like we look at all these different companies across industries, and I work my butt off to like stay in tune and learn about all these different things. But picking up new stuff is hard, and then trying to get to the top of something new and thinking you belong, like take something different up here, I think.
That's really interesting to hear you say that too, because like from my perspective, I'm like, all right, you were probably an ace high school recruit who was like a stud.
Yeah.
You went to, sorry to my Oregon friends, growing up, Duke was my entire dream school. I was a JJ Redick super fan.
Yeah.
And I was like, obviously they need another JJ. This is like, thought that way too long. And so like you went to Duke, and then like just the ridiculousness of like not playing the sport and picking it up and throwing as hard as a pro. It's like, so for me, working with athletes of your caliber often, there's like such a confidence, and so, but I think the best ones are guys that you walk into a new experience, even if you're good at another one. Yeah. All right. How can I learn? How can I, approach this from the same mindset that I got great at that thing? I think you do that clearly with JDS, which is, you didn't, wake up one day and were great at baseball. Yeah. Probably worked your ass off for it. Right. And so athletes that take that mindset versus just, I'm going to be great at it.
No, I agree. That's right. But like it takes like, you have to remind yourself of that sometimes, right? And take the long run and like commit to things. But it's hard at first. I think a lot of people go through that where they're just like, what am I doing here? Why do I think I belong? And it makes me want to ask you, like, when you're starting rec league, what is that, competitive landscape like? Like who, you see companies go try and create something that looks like a bigger company, a product or whatever, and then they get sued and they get killed by the big guy, or like, it just can't happen. What was that like for you? Was it intimidating to say, I'm going to go win New Balance as a client, and whoever else, you're not going to get it. It's going to be Jack. I'm showing up now. Was that tough?
No, because if we don't win, they don't know me anyways. Yeah. If we don't win, then we became everything they thought we would be. Yeah. All right. Well, what if we do win? Yeah. And so, like, at the end of the day, I thought what was interesting about, we're playing the same sport. We're not all in the same league. And I felt like there's like amazing agencies, and there's agencies that get stepped on, and it's like, not everyone's getting the same clients, getting the same briefs, getting the same budgets. Yeah. So you're trying to tell me just because you're in this place, you're better than these guys. Yeah. And it's like, you guys get different. If I'm playing basketball, playing baseball, no matter what field you're on, you can tell that they've got talent and like that they can compete. And so, I would just tell the guys, like, look, if we go into a room to pitch something, who cares if we don't have a 500 person office? Yeah. Like, what are they buying at the end of the day? Are they buying that idea that we're like bigger than we are? Or are they buying the ideas and the mindset that we're presenting them? Because we already know what they want to put out into the world. And so if you basically like boil it down to that fact, which is we're all kind of making the same things, then it's just like idea versus idea. And I'm not scared of anybody, and not because I have like a overconfidence that we're good. I think we're very good because we work hard and because we care. Yeah. But like, great ideas can come from anybody. I mean, but man, dude, if I psych myself up before I get there, then I'm definitely not going to win.
Totally.
And it's like, I did enough of that. I think honestly, my issue in high school, I think that I cared so much about it. I cared so much about being good.
Psyched yourself out.
All the time.
Me too.
All the time.
All the time.
And it was like a big game thing. It was funny too, because like I think I was like in practice awesome.
Yeah.
You know, probably my teammates have different memory. Like I think we were still dunking on you in practice, but I was like, I felt so comfortable. And then a lot of times in games, I don't know if it was just the moment or just the anxiety of like, because I felt like if I did well here, then I could lead to the rest of my life.
Yeah.
I just put too much pressure on myself. And I really think it took like burning out at a job that I was working hard at to just go, you know, I'm okay.
Yeah.
Even if it didn't work out how I thought, I still am fine.
Yeah.
And so now I think that's when I understood that, you know, the idea of like subtly, you know, not giving a fuck, which is you can still care about your work and care about it, but you don't really have to like, you know, rest your existence on it working out or not.
Yeah.
And so for Rec, you know, I was like, just get us in the room.
Yeah.
If you can get us in the room, that's all I want. It was the same with Dime. It was the same with 72. It was the same with every LA. I was like, get me in the door and we will figure out. Cause I think I've gotten really good at understanding what somebody else wants.
Yeah.
And like authentically talking to how I can help them get to it.
Yeah.
And it's different for everybody. You know, like you as a client, it might very much just be for the brand. And very much you also like you need to move up in your job. Like how can I help you get to that point?
Yep.
And so like understanding that, my dad was a salesman growing up, super charismatic guy. So and my mom is a realtor and just like can sell anything to anyone. And so I think I just grew up with this like osmosis happening. But no, I don't. If the other guys are scared, they do a great job masking it. But we have nothing to lose. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We created ourselves so we can end it ourselves. That's how we look at it.
Yeah, it's great. How about like working with your friends and, you know, Trent as a roommate? I think you guys all found each other in a rec basketball league. Is that right?
Yeah. Funny enough, we all worked around 72 and Sunny, and you know, they wanted to do an advertising league. Like, all right, and I'd been in some other leagues. I snuck my way into a celebrity league for a few years. That was an interesting, and so it was like all these different leagues. And Trent was the only other person at 72 that actually played basketball.
Okay.
Apologies to all of my friends from then at the time who did come out and play. But he was the only one who was like, Trent was like all state in his high school in Kansas.
Okay, yeah.
And so I was like, you're good at this thing. Like, we should be friends. And so we just kind of connected on that, really funny. And then, just became friends. And then, but all like through rec basketball. And that, honestly, like most of my clients, most of my friends in LA, like everyone I met through this weird connecting LA pickup basketball landscape. Yeah. It's like hard to explain to people from out of state. But before pre-COVID, I had games 4 or 5 times a week.
Really?
Yeah. And it would just, you know, if you were fun to play with and you weren't terrible, you could get invited to another thing. Yeah. And then it led me to some wild gyms and just like to meet people I never would in such an authentic setting. Cause like I was telling you, like I love to meet people. I love to like listen to their story just like you. I don't need to like them to feel like I'm trying to mine something from them.
Yeah.
And like when you meet people at networking events, no matter what, it just feels like, you know, what do you need out of me? Yeah. And I hate when people think that. And so basketball gives me the opportunity to just like talk to them about the play, pump them up if they're doing good, and then get to know them a little bit. And so it just kind of created these like authentic friendships. Yeah. And so that was with Trent as well. And you know, we still have a rec team called the Rec League, WRECK. And it's like we have, you know, different people from the industry are always just kind of rotating onto it. And it's an amazing third place for us to just hang out and like for an hour, talk shit, play basketball together, be a team. That was the whole purpose around Rec League too, is that, you know, a rec league as an adult is like a bunch of different people from different talents and skill sets and backgrounds and industries come together to be a team for an hour a week. Yeah. And I was like, that's cool.
It's cool.
Thought. Yeah. We're kind of like that. It's like he was an editor, he's a director, he's a brand guy, I was a writer, there's this. We all kind of come together to win as a team. Nice. But you each bring your own thing. Nice. I was like, all right, that's an idea that clicks.
That's nice.
Yeah.
And isn't it funny, like, it's a great setting to, like, learn if somebody's going to be a good professional partner if you're on a team with them. And,
no doubt.
I mean, I guess, you know, rec leagues are for fun. Like, at the end of the day, if you're there to kill everybody all the time, like, you might be the odd man out, but that's going to show, and like how you balance that. Like we want to win and we want to be competitive, but like we want to be good teammates. We want to have fun. We want to be nice. Sports is like the ultimate platform to really, at least for me, because I speak the sports language so well, it's like a really good way to learn, like, do I want to spend time around that person,
So much, dude. Yeah. It shows you how you deal with stress, sharing.
Yes.
Just like, are you happy for others?
Yeah.
Like, can you be okay with someone else's success?
Yeah.
Because there's not a coach here who's telling you have to pass or do this thing. And so I keep an eye on all that, and it's like, dude, honestly, I was telling my wife about this the other day. We had a game, and like the guys were just buzzing. They were all like, when you win, everyone's just happy, and they're just asking about each other's lives and stuff. And it's like, this is, I think I shot 3 times. Like, I don't care. Because it was just a cool community of people brought together. And again, like, they're so successful in their own worlds. But right now they can go back and like have this moment where like there's no pressure for anything else.
Yeah.
And yeah, to your point, I think people weed themselves out that like, and I think too, it's guys that probably didn't really play growing up, like don't know how to deal with wins and losses, and because like the I don't care at the end of the day. I want to win, but like at the end of the day, this 3:00 Sunday pickup game, I'm gonna be fine if we lose, and I don't want to lose any friendships.
You want to win.
Yeah,
you want to win.
No, I'm gonna play my hardest, but I'm not at the end of it. I'm not like there's guys that get heated. It's the same as with golf, snapping your clubs. I guess that's just not me.
Yeah,
but it weeds itself out.
It weeds itself out for sure. Yeah, that's fun, man. I think it would be, Luke and I kind of like get to work together now. Like doing stuff with good friends is awesome. So I think that's awesome for you guys to be able to take like-mindedness and then go start something that's having a lot of success now. What about that? Like now you're up and running. You got some years under your belt. Can you talk a bit about some of the work that you've done and maybe what was the point at which you're like, okay, we got New Balance, we're running these campaigns, it's going well, new stuff's in the door, like we're making it. When did that happen?
Making it's funny because it's like I never think that,
right,
for what it's worth, but I do think like there was a moment where I was like, okay, it's real, and that's cool, and I think that was when it became. And I think we got really lucky, like, with anything, like the first year you're building and you're growing. And I think for a lot of, all the way through this year, we'll take different jobs and relationships that, maybe on paper for other people are like, is this going to yield the best profit or result? And we're like, well, but it's a really interesting relationship, or it's a really interesting opportunity, or it's just something we want to do. And at the beginning, New Balance was... And we had the pleasure of working with them for about 5 years, and it was awesome. And we really got to jump in and have some amazing partners that trusted us.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot in that relationship where, I learned, one, that a client relationship doesn't have to be adversarial.
Yeah.
It can be a trust. And like, it's like, hey, we want to help you. You're letting us do that too. Because it's,
Is that something that you saw in other places where it always felt adversarial? Or?
No, and not to knock anything else. I think it was like, there was it was bigger agencies, and I think they kept creatives at somewhat of an arm's length, where I was really only talking to clients on presentations or productions.
Yeah.
And so there wasn't really a day-to-day communication. So, and I think for just me, one, it's not sustainable for every creative to be talking to every client every day.
Yeah.
But I noticed, like, if they don't know me, they don't know how I think, they don't know that I see the world how they see it, or I can empathize with how they see it, then how are they going to trust me on the creative ideas that I'm presenting?
Totally.
And so it felt like the moment we got a job before, like the trust then stopped.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, what do you need to sell me now?
Yeah.
And with Rec, I feel like we have had such an awesome opportunity to become really friends with all of these people, and they really are partners on this. Like, not just a line. Like, it is super collaborative, and we have like very low ego, and we just want things to be awesome. Yeah. Like, and that's also cool. Is like no one here is like making it for their portfolio. They're not making selfish work because they have to. It's like it's our thing, you know. So we want it to be good for you guys. We want this relationship to be good. But yeah, I would say like I was surprised at how the client relationship differed
Yeah.
for us. And that maybe that was different for account people at my prior agencies because they were more day to day. But from a creative sense, I felt like they really enjoyed getting to talk to me and pick my brain. And I felt like when I, presented ideas and our team presented ideas, our other creative directors, like you just felt an ease. There was like, they exhaled and they're like, all right, I can judge the idea versus like you and the idea and what you want to do, and then I think, we have good people working on stuff, which helps, but yeah, I mean, again, I think tangent, so apologies, but
good.
Yeah, to talk about like the, work kind of going into it. Yeah, New Balance was we helped launch basketball for them, and We Got Now for them, which they're still
We Got Now is
crushing. A lot of that is attributed to their internal team: Patrick Cassidy, Sean Sweeney, Siobhan Bragi, and their whole team's awesome. And at that time, that was our main kind of counterparts, and a lot of other great people. And basketball, I think, was to me the moment where I was like, all right, we have a voice in this world.
Yeah.
Because, they had signed Kawhi Leonard.
Yeah.
And they're like,
Big
we don't really know what to do. What should we do with him? And our pitch back to them was like, all right, I watched everything that he had ever made. And I already was a fan of his game. And I was like, everyone is treating him like LeBron.
Yeah.
Gatorade, Jordan, like everyone's treating him like he's that kind of guy. He's not that guy.
Yeah.
He's much quieter. He's weirder. He has his own thing. And like, that's cool. His fans clearly like him for that thing. So why would we try to use him different than why everyone likes him?
Yeah.
So you're like, what if we just don't have him say anything?
Yeah.
And we let everything else speak for him?
So good.
And so those things and then it coincided with, the Raptors won, and then he was moving to LA. And so we had like 3 little, spot campaigns that came around that time. So it hit this opportunity of a cultural moment happening, really interesting athlete, and a new brand to the basketball space.
Yeah.
It was like that at that point, basketball was dominated by Nike basketball. And this was like 2019. And, Adidas had obviously like Dame Lillard and Donovan Mitchell and a bunch of guys, but New Balance was like not as accepted. Now I feel like there's much more players in the basketball space, but it was like you have to make a space because basketball fans will call it on you.
Yeah.
And they're very online, and they love not just pettiness, but like humor is a big part of it. And so, we took advantage of that moment where he was coming back to LA, and we did this whole thing called Reign Over LA. And, he had a little crown on his keychain, which is a little subtle dig, at LeBron coming to LA the year before. And, he went under a billboard that said Kawhi Town instead of Hollywood. So there's all these like little
so
Easter eggs.
Good. It's so genius.
But it was like, but they knew that. If New Balance didn't trust us on that, didn't agree, those die in a deck somewhere.
Yeah.
And instead, they became a talking point on every, broadcast for the next year. Kuzma and Braun are making the crown, motions on camera as like a result of it, because he's like, I'm the king, not you. Yeah. And we were just like, this is great press for New Balance.
Great press for New Balance.
It's fun. Nothing, it's not.
I remember
anything.
it. Like that's years ago now, and I'll remember that probably forever. Yeah, I mean, the majority of the stuff like that you guys have done. When I learned it was you guys, I was like, oh my God, I remember this distinctly. Like this made an impression on me, So it's cool to hear you're when you talk a talk, you're walking the walk. Like it added up when I first met you, and I was like doing the research, like, wow, they're hitting the nail on the head. Why do you think that? Because you don't need to point anybody out, but I think a lot of people think brands miss all the time. Why do you think? Is it they have the wrong people making decisions? Is it they're not in touch with the talent? Is it systematic issues like processes that shouldn't be in the creative process at all? Like, what do you think is the reason that most of these brands are missing a lot?
I think twofold or a couple reasons. One, I mean, it's hard.
Yeah.
I think every brand wants every piece of communication to go viral.
Yeah.
It's hard to make something organically pop. Mm-hmm. And so even you could have all the ingredients lined up, every single thing, it just doesn't hit. And that's like sometimes just not even just the algorithm, that's just how it works. So it is hard. I think too, there's a lot of factors at play for a lot of brands that like need to show the exact statistic and why this thing worked. Like you need to show me exactly why it's doing X, Y, and Z. And we're saying, well, some of that can just come from like brand connectivity and like you connecting and being real with an audience who now likes you a lot more. Yeah. And so getting through some of those layers is tough. I think for a lot of brands, there's a lot of voices, and ultimately, like, I bet there's great creative ideas in a lot of these things. It's when you see something on TV or come across your desk, often it's like so many more people and time. Yeah. I've touched it and been a part of it than you think. But I think the best work is made probably by fewer roadblocks of just like somebody who understands it and trusts. Because look, there's for as many examples as we could say about great communication and marketing work in sports, there's like probably equal amount of flubs where it didn't hit the mark, or maybe it accidentally even offended someone, or and it's like, oh, we thought this was making Brave work. Totally. But we were like, all right, well, we don't want to manufacture anything. We just want to like put you into the story with your own lane to do it, using like self-awareness. I feel like self-awareness is a superpower for brands. Like for New Balance, for instance, we were like, no one is going to take us seriously in basketball at the beginning. And like in the first spot, it said, this is Kawhi, these are his shoes, they're New Balance, don't tell anybody. And it was like, we knew before you said anything that it's like, it's a New Balance basketball shoe, and it's awesome, and he just won a title in them. And it's like, okay, well, all right. If they know that, I can't really make fun of it. So now I'm forced to like interact with it. So I think the more self-aware you are, the brand, and then just like, it's the same reason we talked about at the beginning. Like when you watch something, you can call bullshit on it. I mean, like half the Super Bowl commercials are like, they have so much money and they have great creatives on it and great brands on it, but they often miss the mark, not because they're not made well or there's enough money put into it. Right. It's just, it doesn't feel like a real thing. Yeah. Right. It doesn't feel like the moment, or, I think you have to make a statement and you have to like be real with it. And if you have a brand in a moment, like for New Balance or Premier League coming to the US and wanting to make more of a mark there, or EA Sports bringing college football back and wanting to make that mark after 11 years. If you have these moments and you have these awesome brands, like lean into that and then, find your niche. Find what's real. With the culture and just like be a fan. Yeah. When people feel like you get them, then they feel like they get you a little bit more. Yeah. And so there's a disconnect, but it's a lot of factors, But I found the best work is often like when we find a couple of partners that on the client side that trust and like also have a really good pulse for what's happening, and then just kind of shove it through really. And then when it works, then everyone's like, oh, great idea.
How risk averse do you think most of these brands are? I mean, I guess it's a tough question to answer because there's a spectrum of them out there. But to me, I want to give you the keys to the car after I see what you've done, and I see that you understand the sports audience so well. If you want to take risks, like I think that's a good thing. I mean, somebody else isn't thinking about it. They're not going to do it. And Jack and Rec League is probably right where the risk needs to be. Do you run into that problem a lot, or is it kind of like you've earned the trust and people kind of give you the green light to get weird, creative, whatever?
Sometimes, like, I think what helps us is we're like, hey, we also understand the brand risk side of it. Yeah. Like if we were just content kids, I think they would be like, you don't understand the magnitude of what you're doing, Right. And so because we're like, hey, we understand, like, to take risk for a brand could be, awful and just like
awful, catastrophic,
totally. Yeah. And so like we don't do that. We never present something that's like, hey, this might actually also hurt you. Totally. I think it's calculated risk, but we'll present like a riskier option often. Yeah. And I would say brands are like risk averse because a lot of the brands are like made up of great individuals that also like want to continue their career and also want to build their thing. And so like, if it works out for them, great. But if something doesn't, then are they on the hook for it too? Yeah. And so it's really like building a case for why this risk makes sense at this time.
Yeah.
And that's on us to surround those ideas with enough thinking, sometimes data, and insight around why we think it's a risk worth taking. And so I think that's part of selling great ideas versus just, I had a funny idea for a 30-second commercial.
Totally.
It's like you're leading them through this story where that becomes the logical conclusion that you can win.
Yeah.
Like we need to like throw the oop well in advance before they dunk that thing home. You know, in all honesty, because, and I think, you know, a lot of creatives like struggle with that. I did for a long time. I was terrible at presenting forever. At one point, you know, I just was like looking down into my notes and, you know, then, or, you know, you make the idea of the reveal and I never got the result I wanted and just learned like, all right, I just want to get them nodding. I want to get them all, I agree with that. I agree with, oh, that's interesting. Didn't know that. I agree with that. Okay, you took that insight and you built that thing. So then it becomes less risky, right?
Yeah.
Even if the ultimate thing is a little bit of a brand risk, you've already mitigated that.
Right. So I guess risk, like, you know, what do I mean by risk? And to me, I feel like we're going, and you tell me if you agree, I feel like we're going through a trend where like things are kind of turning over, culture is changing pretty fast, and non-traditional is kind of in. Like weird is in, you know? People want to be weird. And I don't mean that like risk in the sense of, you know, unnecessarily inappropriate or rude or offensive. I just mean risk in like outside the box kind of risk, you know? And that's when those things hit, those are the things that hit the best, right? But like you said, you know, the smallest errors on this stuff where a brand can be like catastrophic, you know? And I feel like you guys do that well. It's like you toy into this is a little like quirky, like Bill Belichick sitting in the lawn chair. Like it's weird and funny, you know?
I mean, I think life's made of the details.
Yeah.
It's like the little things that are awesome, and like to ignore that.
Yeah.
That's for you and I bet it's like the little things like honestly make life amazing. And so just take that same principle into creative work.
Yeah.
Like the little details, you know. But yeah, I think humor's winning. And I think it's great. I think like, you know, a lot of brands like I think met audience moment in the last few years of like wanting to really get serious and try to be inspirational, or at one point for at least a lot of sport brands, it was a lot of like idol worship.
Yeah.
And then you had a lot of audience resistance to that. Idols are now our rivals. Okay, then it became that. Yeah. Then it was like, all right, no more heroes. And then I think we've seen a shift back, as you've seen from Nike and some other things, of like, okay, these are still like targets, you know, these great athletes and these great moments that I want to hit. So it's cyclical in like what the industry is interested in, but I do think humor is clearly winning. Yeah. I think like humor in sports has always played a role. It's such a serious thing anyways to take light of it. Athletes enjoy that too. I think, you know, being jokey to be jokey's sake with athletes is always tough because again, it doesn't feel like them. But, you know, for sports, like it's so interesting. Like people that love it, love the little intricacies of it. Like the NBA is so petty and hilarious. You know, and like
NBA memes, like it's just
no
the
question,
best.
right? And like the players themselves in the NFL, and so these guys are all like young and on social themselves, and like
tapped into it.
Yeah, it's like these little moments, you know, are funny.
Yeah,
and like you can have fun with them, and I think leaning into that it's awesome Easter eggs for the core. And it doesn't ruin any experience if you're not a super fan.
Yep.
It adds to it. Yep. And I think like when people talk about being authentic, I think they misconstrue what that is. And I don't think that's in sports a brand being authentic is talking stats and this and that. It's the passion for why you love the thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that to me, like we love this stuff and we want you guys to love this thing. And that's like the authenticity that needs to come across. And so when you make stuff, you know, every brand needs to stand for something. Otherwise, if they stand for everything, then they're unique to nothing, right? And so, you know, brands often would be like, well, if we're just talking to the core, then we're boxing out everyone else. If we're just talking to everyone else, we're boxing out the core who loves us.
Yeah.
And again, I'm like, okay, there's a core that is super geeky into every bit of that, and I love those people as well. But their passion for that is universal, and like tapping into that is where I think the win is. You know, and that's where stuff like the fun things come up.
Yeah,
you know, and like we did a campaign one time, and again, self-awareness, I think, really works in humor. Like during the pandemic, there was, that whole shipping supply issue.
Yep.
Remember that? And it was like, there was ships stacked up at the harbor and all this stuff. And we went to an athlete shoot for Jamal Murray in Denver, which like, outside of work, I'm just like, hell yes. Can't wait. Love Jamal. I've gotten to work with him a bunch before. Love the Nuggets. Have some great friends over there. So we get there and the shoes didn't show up. So the shoes to a shoe commercial that we all went out to Denver for didn't show up from the shipping supply issue, right? And we're like, seems like a pickle if we're shooting a shoe commercial. Yeah. And we just shot on the spot. I just came up with like this idea about, all right, let's do a shoe commercial without a shoe.
So good.
And that became this thing that we pitched to them. We're like, hey, sorry, but we made the other stuff. And they were like, also, this could be kind of funny in the moment. And they ended up like putting that on broadcast. That became like a thing. It was just Jamal pretending that we had the shoe, but we didn't have it. It's coming. We promise it'll be good. And like little moments like that are easy for a brand to own and move on.
Yeah.
You don't have to wax on that for 4 months and like test it. It's just like, it's a thing that's happening.
Yeah.
You're self-aware of it and like people are going to respect it and respond.
It's so good, man. Like people forgive and forget like so quickly when you're just authentic, when you just acknowledge and say like, and be optimistic, be nice, apologize if you mess something up. And just own it.
Real.
Just own it. And like it goes so far. You ever think about doing politics? You could probably fix a lot of the political campaigns. Not that we need to take this conversation there.
No, I have not. Well, I mean, I guess maybe be open to it if there's a right person. But I think my wife is like rolling her eyes from here. She's getting like a spidey sense talking about it. That's pretty funny. I mean, but that's kind of brands in 100%. In general, right?
To me, those are
politicking for attention, and that's the business we're in right now.
And they're it's a hard business, but to me, politics right now is just they're missing a lot. Those brands are missing a lot. They need some revamping. Both sides, everybody, need some help.
Yes, I think there's a large messaging gap in a realness.
Yes, in a realness problem. Yeah. So like. I loved the Belichick commercial when I learned that was you guys. I was so fired up. This is just like I like sports gambling, and I'm fascinated by Bill Belichick and his whole persona. It was cool to see him like take the I'm so serious, I'm on to Cincinnati, mask off and just like do something fun. And you guys nailed that thing. What was your favorite thing to do though? Because like, you've done so many cool things. I think the EPL stuff you're doing now is so cool. But you have to have a personal favorite where you're like, we just nailed this. We made, the talent look so cool. We made the brand look so cool. We just got all of our creativity out and it just hit. What was it?
Well, thank you, first off. I mean, the Belichick was fun because Underdog's a great brand made up by a group of like young people in their 30s that started this, and they had a dream of making sports better, and they like have grown so exponentially in such a short amount of time, and like truly great people. Like they have been such an amazing partnership to work with, and that campaign was like I roll my eyes on every podcast I listen to, and people are like, oh, it didn't feel like work. Like, that thing was, honestly, I felt like I was in college. We were just like, there was the Underdog team was like in it. One of the clients was like popping off photography while we're doing this. And like Bill Belichick's learning his lines. He's into it. We're like, hey, we get Tyrese Maxey next. Do you have anything you want to say to him? And it felt organic and fun. And like everyone locked into making this brand as big as we can and great as we can. So I've had an absolute like blast working on Underdog. To us, they're just an incredibly important relationship and friendship that we've made with that team. Premier League was a thing that I feel really proud of. It was a large agency pitch for this work. They were bringing the Premier League. They wanted to do the first marketing in the U.S. for a U.S. fan. Yeah. And, I had gotten to work on global Adidas football at 72 and Sunny back in the day. And I just I'd grown up liking soccer, but with working on Adidas, I was like, I love this. It's like so like basketball and the strategy in this, and just, I really fell in love with it. And so getting a chance to even just get in the room and take a crack at Premier League, we were like, this is what we asked for.
Yeah.
So why would, we're going to go as hard as we can on
So
it. And
cool.
like that pitch was months, and we like worked so hard on it. And like to arrive at that place where we were able to, connect the dots and then actually work with them. There was a moment, so we sold that campaign with them. It was called You're In It Now, and that was like, it was bringing it to the U.S. fan, and it was like, whether you're into soccer, you're not, you love it because you like the colors, or your grandparent loved Liverpool, it doesn't matter, like you're in the thing, you are welcome here.
Yeah.
And so, we got Will Poulter, the actor, to be into it. He's an enormous Arsenal fan, and there's a moment we were on set, and I think we all just looked at each other and we're like, we're here.
Yeah.
We're here. I know it's been 7 years since we started it, but that was like a moment where I was like, we were here. Everyone else wanted this thing. We worked hard, and I felt like it was an awesome moment, and we're helping to build this great brand in America and like be trusted with that. And I thought that was just like a really cool geek out moment. And none of this is lost on me. Like anytime I get to work with a great brand, great athlete, like I feel very grateful. I try to prepare, like I was saying, for everything. I don't take any of it for granted in general. And so in terms of like other things, we got to help launch college football. I was telling for EA Sports, like really proud of that work, because that was such a unique collaboration with our counterpart there. This guy, Josh Klein, who's like been at EA for a long time, great guy. And, he called and he was like, hey, we don't have a lot of time, but, everyone in the world's waiting for this game to come back. Yeah. And we gotta get something out that could be cool. And we just kind of went into a cave. And I mean, talking the matter of a couple weeks, that thing was briefed, written, shot, and out into the world. I mean, we had an all-nighter edit session for that thing. And I think it ended up getting like 45 million views or something the first like 48 hours. LeBron, Instagram, like it was all these things. It did everything it needed to do for EA, which was awesome. And I think like, that was cool because I had a bunch of Oregon, we got to sneak in an Oregon like football moment. And so I had a bunch of like kids from college like, oh, cool, this is what you're doing now. So I thought that was just really cool. But yeah, I mean, I'm honestly like, I'm pumped when the guys are pumped. Yeah. And when everyone feels like, we've ended something and they're proud of it. And, it takes so many hands to do this. There's so many great production people, our producers, editors, like our colorists been with us forever. Like there's just great people that are, don't get a ton of credit. And like anytime we can flex all of those arms on a project is pretty awesome.
How big is like the ideas funnel? Like you just, you get the, there's an RFP out there, right? Somebody wants this done. They have this coming up, and who really gets to throw their hat in the ring and be like, this is what we should do? Is it you and Trent in the room, or like, how does that go? Like
when we see something, like who gets to say we should do this?
Like who comes up with these ideas? I think these ideas are genius, and I'm curious, like,
when you're actually building it.
Yeah.
Honestly, like, one idea, anyone can come up with an idea. Like anyone at Rec is like, I got an idea for something. There's no like, thank you. Don't you have a brand email to me right? It's so like we mind because everyone loves sports there. Yeah. Everyone played sports at some level, so everyone has insight to something, whether they know how to write scripts or not.
Right.
But in terms of like the idea brainstorm, typically we'll brief our teams in on everything that's happening, and they'll come in and they'll bring me different territories. Maybe I have a few thoughts on it too, and then we kind of just like take all of those, brainstorm with all of them, and just kind of keep riffing on it. I think one big thing for us, and it took me years to learn this, which is like not being precious, like authentically not being precious about an idea. Mm-hmm. That took me forever to like authentically feel that way. Yeah. Because you're a creative person, this, like when you write something, you do something, you're like kind of putting a little piece of yourself into the word. Yeah. And so when the next person shits on it, you're like, they're talking about me. Yeah. And like it took forever to not be precious about those things, or precious to the point that's like, if somebody else applies pressure and questions to this, am I worried they're going to find out it's not a good idea, or they're going to find a better idea? Yeah. And once I was able to just like, what's the best idea? Mm-hmm. So I try to do that to every writer, designer, creative director that works with us. It's like, you are going to get credit for this. You're a part of this, whether you come up with the line or not. You being here doing this helps that happen. Yep. And so that's an organic thing. There's we have writers that are writing the decks and coming up with the ideas, but it's often like, there's no real secret sauce to it. It's like I need everyone to be like kind of perennially interested in online and sports. Like I want you to care about like the culture of sport and be up to date with what is happening. And so sometimes guys will be like, I just have insights today. I have maybe a clipping of an idea. I saw, that this athlete was really into pickleball and they did, X, Y, and Z. Okay, all right, that's interesting. How can we tie that back to the strategic brief and like put it in? But so I help lead the creative side. So responsibilities on a paper wise, my department would help come up with ideas, and I think that's like become a really strong just strength of mine. It's just idea creation. But when we lead those ideas all the way, we'll go months back and forth with a client on an idea. We might agree on that idea to do everything. And we get on set, and in 2 seconds, an athlete or something's like, I don't want to say that.
Yeah.
Like, okay. So you can't be precious there. Tom Brady's like, I don't want to say that. You're like, okay. So if I'm like, oh, this is the only idea we thought of, so you have to, and that happens all the time. Yeah. And it's just like, no problem, dude. I don't even want to say it. Yeah. And so we just, move on. Yeah. And I think we've gotten really good at half of our stuff is improv.
Yeah.
Legitimately. That's half cool. Of the stuff that we have in there was not in the script because on the day and in the moment, all of it connects. And I think that's where you see experience meets the moment, which is we're super prepared. We've worked our hardest and we're locked in. Because of all that, that's how improv happens. Yeah. Not because we're willy-nilly about it. Yeah. It's because all of these factors and it's like, oh, I didn't see it that way. So that process happens all the time.
Yeah. Was creativity like a conscious decision of yours the same way that sports was? I guess we get put in sports right as kids, but then at some point we make this conscious decision where I'm going to work extra hard at this. I'm going to pay attention to this and I'm going to try and make something of this. And I imagine it was kind of a similar thing to you where you were just naturally I had some ideas that were making people laugh and I kind of built a personality around this and I'm good at this and people like me for this and I'm going to consciously hone this skill. Is that how did that go down? One, I think it was the natural extension of dreams for me. I was my mind is moving so fast all the time, coming up with 400 solutions to every little step problem in my way. And so, as a kid, if I'm my dreams are to play sports or do this, that's so in the future. Creative writing, doing anything, art, it presented a way to actualize some of the other dreams that I had. Or just how do I get this out and express it? My dad was an art major in college, which in the 70s, didn't lead him into a life of being Michelangelo, led him into commercial sales because, you come out of, Miami, Ohio with an art degree in late 70s, not a ton of job offers. Yeah. And then, my mom has always been very creative. And so I think my parents, what was awesome about growing up, and my brother's creative, my sister's creative. My sister was an art major and she became a producer. My brother is A&R and talent management in a hip hop label in Los Angeles. So we've all kind of found our creative way. Yeah. So one, it comes very naturally as a natural extension of that. And then two, my parents were young parents when I was born, and they just never imposed what they liked on me or what they wanted me to do. Cool. Yeah. So my dad played hockey in college and was a baseball hockey nut, and I played it, but I was basketball's the thing. Yeah. And he's done. Basketball's the thing for me too. Yeah. And I was writing's the thing. My mom was a English major. She's great, writing's the thing. We're gonna go off on that. And so it just became this I don't think they knew any better, and they were just what are you into? Yeah. And that was really cool because I think that more than anything opened up possibilities. I think a lot of people have opportunities, maybe they had a fortunate upbringing and they were afforded the ability to go and fail because they had a safety net. My version of it came from my parents weren't you can't do this because they just weren't. They were also young. Yeah. And they're I'm going to do this too. And so it just kind of felt like a natural. What are you interested in? Okay, well we're going to do that then. Yeah. And it was
it was really cool, and it's been cool like growing up and becoming friends with my mom like as an adult.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, you really were like 25.
Yeah.
And like didn't know this, but you nurtured this interesting like ability for us all to just kind of, you know, funnel these like, again, like ADD-ness into things.
Yeah.
And I think that just like a lifetime of that, like this is just an extension of it.
Yeah, yeah. How about the rest of your creative aspirations? I feel like a lot of the time people that are as creative as you and having success in like one domain, right? Right now you're crushing advertising, but you also had Rec League films, right? And that documentary. Is that like an itch you have to do something bigger, and maybe it lives in Rec League, and Rec League is something that enables it? But do you want to do more? Do you have like other, you know, aspirations?
So much, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's this funny thing where like I have never gotten to the point where I'm like, this is what I'm doing for my life.
Yeah.
And like I don't know if that ever happens. You know, I think like this is a fantastic vehicle to tell stories, meet great people, and like push culture forward. I have always been obsessed with making films. You know, I want to make more, you know, being able to do that featured doc with the guys was amazing. Like that was such an organic, interesting experience. So I definitely want to do more of that. Been writing some features. We definitely want to do that. That feels, I'm understanding of the beast that is, the industry that it is, and how hard it is to do it. But again, I already know what's going to happen if I don't try it, which is nothing. Yeah. So I'm very apt to doing that, and that's something that you'll hopefully see me jump into the future and a lot of the rec guys. Outside of that, you know, I think again, I'm very obsessed with like where is opportunity and where maybe like. The track thing in college was interesting because I thought I knew exactly what I wanted to do, and that presented this weird fork in the road that was also cool. And I was like, okay, well, there's probably more of those then. Yeah. And so that's where I'm like, advertising is cool, movies are cool, but there's probably something I'm like not missing. Yeah. And that obsession of finding that opportunity consumes me a little bit. Yeah. I would love to ultimately, I think, at the end of the day, like, being in the gym, like being in sports makes me happy. And basketball is the one thing that calms me down. Yeah. Like it calms my brain down. It makes sense. I feel right. That's like whenever people are like, you know, this is where I feel the most me. For me, it's like in that world of sport. Yeah. And so I think ultimately I'd love to, whether that's like working with a team or doing that, like, you know, that's like the ultimate pie in the sky dream. Yeah. Would be like, whether that's creative or not, it's like into something. Because I think I could funnel these ideas into player development and that kind of stuff. Oh, yeah. So creativity is everywhere, right? It's like, exactly. Like it's a way of thinking. Like I make things now, but I feel like that skill set can funnel into other types of leadership. So, you know, I think eventually that would be really cool to get into. But yeah, the films thing, like I have a lot of stories that I want to put out there that I think could be really interesting and hit people in the same way that certain films hit me as a kid and helped inspire and stuff. But yeah, I mean, selfishly, I would love to, you know, film a couple features. Do some stuff. Yeah. I feel like we're at a place right now where like we need more humor in what's coming out. You know, I don't think this is like a novel thought of mine, but you know, when was the last good comedy? You know, like what's been the thing that made you laugh the hardest in TV or movies? And for me, it's kind of hard to think of. I think there's like these like serious genres that kind of have these like subtle humors to them, and like I dig that stuff's good. But yeah, I don't know. I'm watching Severance right now, and I think they're really good at that. But yeah, would love to see your brain get into some long form stuff. I think that would be really cool. Thanks, man. Yeah, it's there's some great content out there. I almost feel overwhelmed with the amount of options. I feel like with streamers, and I almost spend half the time I would be watching something, searching for something. Yeah. And you know, there's a lot of like really great hour dramas that feel, to your point, intense. Yeah. I think a lot of them, Severance, Ozark, that they embed humor really darkly and fun. Yeah. And I think that's like, it helped lightens it up. I think Sopranos was like that. Yeah. If you rewatch that, it's actually like quite hilarious in a lot of points. But to your point, you know, it's the whole like comedy thing too. Like it is really interesting. I'm curious, like, where film goes from here with comedies, because to me, I feel like it's hard to be funny in 8K resolution. It's like these really well shot things are just not as funny to me in general. I don't even think it's like, I think people blame like, oh, can you, we can't say certain things, or there's not the certain talent. It's like there's funny minds out there.
Oh yeah,
no question.
Oh,
I mean, I think we just probably aren't greenlighting all of those things, and it's again, comedy is one of those things. It's like there isn't a formula for it. It's a unique thing that like something that might make you laugh might not make me laugh.
Totally.
But yeah, you're right. I search for more like levity and irreverence in my current like media consumption diet. For sure. It's always open to like more suggestions. Severance is good though.
Would you? Severance is really good. We got a new episode tonight, which I'm excited about. But I am curious what you think about tech accelerating, AI maybe changing or not changing your job in various ways. I'm not sure, but also like what that does to what people consume and like what they value. Because I feel like you must have an opinion on this, right? You're dialed into what humans want and what resonates with them. We're getting in this world where like you can just have a computer talk back to you, and your whole thing is authenticity and like human connection, right? So like, how do you see all this going? And how do brands position themselves for all this? That kind of thing.
I mean, me personally, like, I want to embrace it.
Yeah.
I've always, like, it's the same with, I've never wanted to be a person who becomes, like, a get off my lawn, whether that's for a younger generation, whether that's for new tech. Like, I just feel like that position does not win, ever.
Yeah.
Like, I'm standing my ground, like, the future isn't cool. I'm suspicious of the future sometimes, but I'm embracing it. I think in terms of the AI, like, it's gonna change things.
Yeah.
And to like, a guy at Rex said this the other day. There was a posting about a brand, I want to say it was Coca-Cola, who made their Christmas thing, and it was almost entirely AI done by, I don't want to get this incorrect, but I think it was around like a 2-person agency or something, like very minimalistic, which would probably have been like a very large agency, large budget thing in the past for this like, behemoth of a brand. And, this individual at Rec was like, everyone on my LinkedIn is like hating it. And I was like, well, where does everyone on your LinkedIn work? He's like, oh, kind of in marketing, I guess. I'm like, yeah, dude, because that's I was like, did you see any audience people that are like, not for me? And so like, to be blind of that, that's like, yeah, I think creators are going to be annoyed by it. No question. Do audiences care? I'm interested to see. I mean, I think like we already can't tell the difference between things as like a species. And so to me, I think like, being resistant to it or pretending it doesn't exist because like humans are going to want things with soul. Like as a writer, as a creator, like obviously I want that. I want human things done by human people who are experiencing something that has a soul to it. But I'm like realistic in that these tools are going to help. Ultimately, like I think that the landscape will have to even out to a point that like, you can't have AI do everything's job and expect society and industries to run the same, obviously. But I do think you're going to have to like update your skill set, which you should be doing anyways. Learn how can we utilize this to our benefit. So we've already been thinking about ways just to transform our business to lean into it, not to change. Because like what I don't love is when brands and agencies try to cherry pick culture when they like as it's going. Like when Vine was like big and into TikTok, everyone's like every spot needs to be 6 seconds. All right, it can be, but we don't need to like change everything to that. Like you're seeing right now, like this is hour-long podcast format, 30-minute Mr. Beast videos. These are still highly consumed items, just as much as a 10-second TikTok. It's not really about attention span. It's about like, how are you connecting and like actually owning that attention span? So if we can use AI to benefit that as tools, maybe take away from, a few, this is the meter outside. How do we can edit that. What's the word?
Oh, no, that's staying in there.
That's staying in there. What time is it, Luke?
It's 4:05.
Okay, cool.
I mean, you guys are at approaching 90 minutes.
Yeah, I was about to finish up, but yeah.
Just apologies there. In terms of AI, where was I on the? We can edit this part out.
I don't know. I think this is humans like this. I think they like this.
This is where Jack's alarm went off.
It's a matter of owning the attention, and if AI can help that, then absolutely as well.
Yeah. So
Yes.
Luke said it perfectly.
Luke's
But
dialed in.
essentially, like using it as the tools that it's meant to, instead of like replacement.
Totally.
And like I think you're gonna have to keep up with times and and adjust. But it will change a lot of things. I think like it'll change a lot of stuff with photographers and designers specifically. But does that mean that they just get better at using it? Probably.
Yeah, probably.
But I think that there will always be a space for, no one can predict the future. I think there'll all be a space for people who care, work hard, and are like trying to learn and find new opportunities for things.
Yeah.
And like I think we sometimes fall back on like the bombastic, like worst case scenarios of everything. I think it's good to be aware of stuff, but like we'll figure it out.
Totally.
And
I like to think that, maybe there's a scenario where this goes really well, and we get to have a bit more free time because like tools are helping us accomplish tasks faster. We're more productive, and then we like have more time for stuff that makes us laugh, and people that are good at that get rewarded, and
I saw somebody say like that AI was supposed to help them with the mundane tasks so they could focus on art, and instead it's taking the art things. So
that part's not great. Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's a good way of phrasing it.
But I feel like, I don't know, there's definitely been some really impressive AI generated art stuff that will blow your mind. But to date, at least like long form, complicated things, like you can always tell when there's a human mind behind that. When something really hits, there's a human behind it,
and it's only going to get better. It's the worst AI is ever going to be today. Tomorrow's the worst it's ever going to be. Like it's going to get better.
It's going to get better.
But to your point, there's ways to utilize it. And we'll have to learn, and it's a brave new world. We don't know what's happening, but I'm not going to go into the future terrified about it. I'm just going to go into it the same zone that it's for me, when we started Rec, or you go off and you do something, or you invest in a new company, there is a amount of risk that you're undertaking anyways with the thing, and you wouldn't go into it if there wasn't. If you look at AI or any changing technology the same way, okay, maybe there's an opportunity though to see something that somebody else hasn't.
Yeah.
What's the other option?
Yeah, there's no
just
other
give
option.
up?
There's no other option. Yeah, just keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Anything else that you're working on right now that you can tease or get us excited for? If you can't, that's okay.
Great stuff coming with Underdog. I think that's going to be a blast. Got some EA Sports stuff coming up that's going to be really fun. And then, I think we're going to try to unveil some just bigger thinking this year, just in terms of like Rec and where we see that in the future of athlete marketing and sport, and still cooking on some of that stuff. But I think there is, I speak a lot to just like finding opportunity and being ahead of the curve. And that's become a giant thing internally. And so, been able to be an agency, production company, and how do we utilize that so that these brand partners, athlete partners are like more, set up for the future and invested in their own content and brands. And I think, I have a few ideas of what we can do. So, incredibly ominous here, but it could be good things this year. And then, call us. Come knock on our door. Let's have a chat.
Yeah, awesome. Well, dude, thank you so much.
How about
we got some good stuff cooking at JDS. I think that athletes.org, trying to go out there and solve college sports right now, negotiate on behalf of the athletes is fascinating. And as a college sports lover, it feels good to be with Jim Cavall in a time of uncertainty with this thing that we all love that needs to find its path forward. I think his leadership is incredible. That's going to be a really fun one to watch. It's going to be a windy road, but I think a lot of people are counting on him and other people to rein this thing in. So athletes.org, if you're a young athlete, you should check it out. If you're a college sports fan, you should check it out. The Potential Players Association of College Sports, which is crazy to say, but I think is super necessary now. Yeah. The other thing along the lines of college is Slam U has been super exciting. You know Slam forever. Traditionally, an NBA focused media company bleeds into college basketball, but also kind of a different audience, like maybe not one-to-one overlap. So just naturally kind of just stuck with the NBA. With 19.9, the merchandising unit now running Slam Goods and having all these college licenses, Slam U and the interplay between the better merchandising and now the content has been a really exciting start to 2025. And I like college sports, right? Yeah. So I love the NBA, but that's another fun thing to watch.
Duke and Rutgers basketball.
Duke and Rutgers.
Not doing bad.
Good year, yeah. But yeah, it's a lot of stuff going on at JDS. PRC is in a million places at once. I'm trying to help them basically.
Onward and upward.
Onward and upward.
Good
yeah.
things ahead.
Yeah.
Appreciate you doing this.
Yeah. Thank you for coming on, man. Really appreciate your time.